Hey everyone, Danny Cunningham here. Before we get started with today's show, just a quick heads up. Swipa and I recorded on Sunday morning, so that was prior to the Al Horford news that he has agreed to a multi-year contract with the Golden State Warriors. We do briefly touch upon Horford and the Warriors because that is something that has been rumored about all summer in a larger conversation that has to do with Jonathan Kuminga and whether or not he will be with Golden State and the Warriors at large. But just as a heads up, when we talk about that, we don't mention it because we recorded the entire podcast before that news came out. So just keep that in mind as you are listening to that. And now here is today's show. On today's show, Media Day has just about arrived. What are some things that we're very interested in learning when every team meets with the media tomorrow? We'll talk about that on today's edition of Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from Locked On Cavs. You might know my co-host Swipa from Locked On Nuggets, and we want to say thank you to you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend, tell a friend about the show. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell as we get started so you don't miss anything from Locked On NBA. And of course, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. On Monday, Media Day, basically all across the NBA. There are some teams, Swipa, that have had their Media Day so far. Those teams will be heading internationally for the preseason, whether it's to China or somewhere else. But there are teams that will be traveling, so they had their Media Day last week. But for the most part, the vast majority of teams will be convening with the media, and the season is finally here on Monday. It's finally time to get going.
Been a long summer, a lot of waiting, a lot of questions, a lot of things that I think we all want to know about the teams that we cover, a lot of the things that the fans are looking forward to on what their personnel is going to look like, coaching strategy, what's going to be different. Houston, the Fred VanVleet injury, how are we going to overcome that? I think for Denver, bouncing back with a brand new roster after having a disappointing season last year, I would say Cleveland, I think ending their season earlier than they thought they would. And then having, 4 players, I think legitimately had all-star cases last year. And then now you come back, you're healthy, you add Lonzo Ball. What are the questions going to be answered that are going to be there this year? And how are they going to start the year? They're going to be a lull based on how last year went, or are they going to be like, all right, we're going to have to prove something? I'm excited. I just think all the way around, there are so many cool, awesome opportunities for the folks that work in media to ask questions tomorrow. And I think to start putting stories and pieces together that are going to be foundational to why their team overcome so many expectations for the next year, or why they disappointed going into the season. And one of the things I love about Media Day, and Danny, you've been in the media longer than even I have, when you're in these segments, so much of the first day of the year in Media Day helps you set the standard for what the audience and what fans can expect from the team throughout the year. I actually think Media Day is one of the most integral parts of NBA storytelling, because this is like the beginning of the journey of every year. And it's with these moments, these opportunities, that you really get to see why were certain teams made to go through the grind a little bit better than others. And you really get some insight from coaches, from GMs, and even ownership on this is the direction of our team, and we believe that we have the guys to do it.
Yeah, and to that point, this was my first year back covering the Cavs after I lived in Minnesota and covered the Wolves for a couple of seasons. But it was Donovan Mitchell's first year in Cleveland, and Darius Garland at Media Day was talking about how the vibes were immaculate, right? And that is something it's like, okay, that's going to be something that you want to check in on all year. And then I remember the Cavs went on a losing streak at a certain point that season. I think it was in like February or March, because they always seem to go through that kind of lull at that time of year. And I asked him, like, hey, want to check in, how are the vibes right now? And he goes, they're still immaculate. So it's like those things that you can build the stories that you're going to be able to keep up with all year. They really start at Media Day. The best way I can describe it to, it's kind of like the first day back at school. Like everybody, for the most part, is excited to see one another. Everybody's in a good mood. And I think that one of the best parts about this, and this is not just with the good teams, but it's with all teams, there is always a sense of optimism around everybody at Media Day, whether you are a team like Denver, like Cleveland, like Oklahoma City that expects to win the championship this year. Obviously, only one team can, but multiple teams expect to. Or if you're a team like Brooklyn or Washington that knows it's in a rebuild, everybody feels optimistic on Media Day. And that is one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite days of the year. I do want to get to some storylines that I think we're both interested to find out about. And the first one I want to start with is with one of those teams that maybe doesn't have championship expectations this year, which is different than where they've been in the past. I want to head on over to Boston because I'm very interested, Swipa, to see how the Celtics approach Media Day, how they handle this season, given that Jason Tatum obviously had that Achilles injury in the postseason against the New York Knicks. Kristaps Porzingis no longer there. Drew Holiday no longer there. I am fascinated to see, how do the Boston Celtics view this season, and what do we learn about them on Media Day on Monday?
Well, I think what's also aiding that, bro, is the videos coming out with Jason Tatum. Have you seen those? Like his workout videos?
Like and even his media circuit appearance, like going on First Take, doing this media and talking about his recovery. I have seen some of the workout videos, and those are always the things. And it's a bit different during when a guy is rehabbing. I'm always going to take workout videos with a grain of salt. Like, remember a few years back, Ben Simmons was making in like pickup games. I'm like, okay, let's actually like see you do it in an NBA setting as opposed to doing it at Lifetime Fitness, because you're an NBA player. You should be able to do that at Lifetime Fitness, but doing it in a game is a very different story. It's a little bit different with a guy coming back from injury, but I think that he is trending in the right direction. Now, should he play this year? That is one of the things that maybe we hear about from the Celtics leadership on Monday.
Yeah, I'm not of the opinion he should be playing this year, but that's just based on, again, I want to also open myself up for the idea that scientific evolution has happened so quickly that in the blink of an eye, basically, we've gone from, hey, Achilles injuries take you out of your career, 15, 20 years ago, to 4 years ago? Remember Cam Akers tore his Achilles, and then he played 6 months later for the Los Angeles Rams as running back. Football is obviously a different story. Now we're moving into a scenario where Jason Tatum, Damian Lillard, and Tyrese Halliburton, they've all torn their Achilles, but JT might be benefiting from medical advances that we just didn't have even as of 2 years ago. So I don't want to say it can't happen, but based on previous recent history, I don't want to see him play this year. And I want to see them really try to find out, who are we without Tatum? I think Derek White, Jaylen Brown, really try to figure out what exactly their role can be this year, like how they can grow, how they can expand their games as players. I mean, all the way around, if you look at that roster, like, they're not very good. They're not super deep. I don't think that, the bigs are anything to write home about. I mean, that's probably the biggest glaring weakness that they have. They just don't have centers. Obviously they lost their best center. He goes to Spurs, and I think that's going to make a big difference for them. But overall, they don't have the interior size that you necessarily would expect from the Boston Celtics. But the good thing about this is that I still think they can make the playoffs this year. I think finding out what Anthony Simons can do in this situation is going to be big. It's going to be important. I think finding what Sam Hauser is, Chris Boucher, they added him. Keita, what does his development look like? They still have Xavier Tillman. They got Luka Garza. I think based on how the Boston Celtics play, there's a world where they truly can find some really high-level play, and I say high-level as in role player high-level play from these players that are all young and developing and trying to find ways to ascend in their career. The team is still good. The roster is still good. I think that a playoff push for them is still within reason, and they should expect to be able to do that.
I think it is within reason, but I also look at it and that probably says more about where the rest of the Eastern Conference is than where the Boston Celtics are right now. If you look at that Celtics roster, they're not a Western Conference playoff team. They're not. They could be an Eastern Conference playoff team, and if they are an Eastern Conference playoff team, they're not a home court advantage in the first round Eastern Conference playoff team. I think the most likely way that the Celtics get into the playoffs is through the play-in if they do make the playoffs, which, hey, still counts. You still get a postseason series. And I think in terms of evaluating some of those role players that you mentioned, doing so in a postseason environment, even if you are, say you're playing the Cavs or the Knicks in the first round of the playoffs, that's not a series that if Jason Tatum is not there, that you're going to win if you're Boston. Now, if Tatum is there, depending what he looks like, maybe you have a fighting chance. But you do get a chance to evaluate in these high pressure moments what some of those guys look like that you named, the Anthony Simons, if he's still there, which I think is a big question about them, because if the Celtics do want to totally get under the tax, I think he's the guy that would be on the way out. But some of those big guys that you brought up, Nemish Queta, who was with them last year, Luke Cornett is the newcomer, or not Luke Cornett, Luka Garza is the newcomer from Minnesota. So I do think that there are ways to evaluate how those guys fit with that franchise moving forward, because I think the best thing that could happen for the Celtics this year is maybe Tatum does come back in March or April and plays, let's say, 10 to 12 games. But you get an opportunity to see what he sort of looks like with some of those guys and see how those guys fit in with him. And then 12 months from right now, when you and I are doing this very same show the day before media day, we're talking about how the Celtics have championship expectations once again.
Sure. I agree. I love that.
All right. Well, we've got a few other camps we've got to get to, including one with a very interesting extension that hasn't been signed, and then another one where they actually haven't done anything yet this offseason. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, today's show brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade because 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavor. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and, more importantly, 0 crashes. One of the best parts about 5 Hour Energy, how portable it is. It comes in this little tiny 2-ounce shot. You look at it and say, hey, it probably can't give me the pickup I need. Wrong. It absolutely can, and it absolutely will. It's got big taste in a tiny shot, and you can take it anywhere and get that boost exactly when you need it. The fact that there are 0 crashes, too, very important, because sometimes you're going to take caffeine and you'll feel that jolt. You'll feel good for 2 hours, and then 2.5 hours later, you feel worse than you did before you had caffeine in your system. That doesn't happen with 5 Hour Energy. So enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or maybe now is the time to be bold. Try something new. Step out of your comfort zone. Try a new flavor in store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, HOUR, energy.com, or on Amazon today. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. Like we said earlier, Media Day is tomorrow, and we've got a lot to get to. And so I want to head to Atlanta next. Ansi Salah has already met with the media, who is the basketball decision maker. I'm not sure of his exact title. Some guys are GMs, some guys are presidents of basketball operations. I just know he's the lead decision maker down in Atlanta. And Trae Young is extension eligible, has been extension eligible all summer, has not signed an extension. And he, I imagine, on Monday is going to get asked about this extension and maybe some other things like, I don't know, Patrick Beverley, for whatever reason that seems to be going on. But he's going to, in all likelihood, be asked about where he thinks things stand between him and the Atlanta Hawks as far as an extension goes. I know you and I have talked about this throughout the summer. We've done an episode on who should be extended, extension candidates that make sense, maybe that don't make sense. And Trae Young, I think, is a polarizing one, because I get the sense the Hawks don't want to give him a max, because I think if they wanted to give him a max, Trae Young would have signed an extension. Sure. So I'm very interested to see where things are at between Atlanta and Trae Young on Monday.
This is such a strange situation. I mean, this $57 million a year he's eligible for, which is $228 for 4 years. Like, I just don't think, for me, that is worth the haggle. Like, I understand that, but again, as you know, Danny, so much of why these things are done or aren't done is behind the scenes stuff that the public is just not aware of. But from everything that I've heard, Trae Young is a nice dude, doesn't have any issues, for the most part, major issues, doesn't have a criminal background, obviously. He just doesn't do things that are detrimental to the team off the court. But then it sounds like a lot of this is just all based on basketball and fit and, all that. But to be fair, Jake Fisher of the Stein line, and I'll be curious to hear what you think about this. He said there are no plans for Young and the Hawks to engage in extension talks this summer. He added, this is August, by the way. He said Young's side has actually been resigned for some time to the prospect of seeing out the final guaranteed year on his current contract rather than securing an extension. Now, that's not apparently sitting super well with Young in some instance, but if he balls this year with the best team he's ever had, is there a world in which he doesn't end up in Atlanta next year? Now, that comes up to has to money. So that's the difficult conversation. But then there are sign and trade opportunities that you have available, not for the Supermax, but you can still do it too. So I do wonder what the resolve with this is going to be. It's like Trae Young is obviously your best player, Danny. I mean, he is very clearly your best player.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the efficiency stuff. You know, he was shooting 39% from the field for a large swath of last year. I mean, it was bad. But, I mean, you're still getting a guy that's like a 25-12 player. So I guess what I'm trying to understand, Danny, is like, you have one of the best, arguably the best playmaker in the league. Him, Jokic, Holly, Luka, wherever you want to put them.
Sure.
You know how I feel about Darius Garland. You know, you put them on.
You feel higher about Darius Garland than I feel higher about Darius Garland.
I think Trae is in the combo with those four. And so for me, it's like he's one of the best playmakers. He's a great offensive engine, an extremely good initiator. I think he's the best half-court alley-oop thrower I've ever seen in the sport.
Okay.
You know, Steve Nash, Pete, like there's Magic, there are a few, but what I've seen from him, he's insane. Floaters, all of it. So like, Danny, it just doesn't make sense to me. Or are they just trying to like say, we don't believe you're good enough. We're going to let you play out this last year. Go find your money. But we're ready to move on and say like, hey, we're going to restart from the bottom and, you know, get assets back for whatever. But we're building around Zachary Ricochet and Jalen Johnson and Kristaps and all that. But even then, that vision just doesn't seem as salient as the other one for me. And that is paying Trae Young.
And the Hawks are in such an interesting spot because on one hand, they've got Trae Young, who's obviously a veteran in this league. They've got Kristaps Porzingis, who's on the last year of his deal too, and he's a veteran. And I think he's a wild card, it's fair to say, just because you don't know that he's going to be able to stay on the floor. Like, you know what you're going to get from him when he's healthy. It's just that health is probably a bigger question mark with him than almost anybody else in basketball at this point. But they also have the young guys that they expect to be really good. Jalen Johnson, had he not gotten hurt, might have been an all-star last year.
Yeah.
I think there are expectations in Atlanta for him to be an all-star this year. Zachary Ricochet yes, there are expectations for him. Like, he's got to stay healthy and do it, but the expectations are there. Zachary Ricochet, how does he develop in year number 2? What does he look like? And the thing that I think might complicate this even more is the trade they made this summer, where they got an unprotected pick from the New Orleans Pelicans. That pick is the better of the pick between New Orleans or Milwaukee. And
mind you, by the way, did you see the Bontemps, the poll that the survey came out, and they said
in
that
terms of like the worst move and the best
move of the offseason? I mean, just how insane was that, Danny? We weren't even on the show when that happened.
Yes, I mean I have not talked to one person across the NBA from various teams that understood what New Orleans was doing there. I've not, and like maybe Derek Queen's a good player, maybe. It's unfair to him that he gets kind of caught up in this, that he's going to be judged based on, you know, are you better than whoever the Atlanta Hawks select next year with that pick? But that's what's going to happen. But the Hawks essentially grabbed a lottery ticket for the number 1 overall pick next year, because I'm sorry, I don't see a world in which the Pelicans make the playoffs in the West this year. And I also think, and I hope this does not happen, but let's say Giannis gets hurt and misses 2 months. If that happens, Milwaukee's probably not making the playoffs in the East either. Like, their margin for error is Giannis. If Giannis is available, they'll be a playoff team. If Giannis is not available, if something happens to him, that roster is not nearly good enough to make the playoffs. So the Hawks essentially might have 2 bites at the number 1 overall pick next spring. So I do wonder if you have to factor that type of thing in when deciding if you want to pay Trae Young all this money and really set your future based on his timeline.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, I wouldn't have made that decision. I think there are some things they could have done differently approaching the contract. I think whenever you get an opportunity to pay your best player, and if they've been a positive add to your roster, I think you do it. So unfortunately, I think that the Hawks, I mean, but again, to be fair though, Danny, this all could be washed. Trae Young goes out, has a career season this year. He's getting paid. Trae Young goes out, has an all-NBA season again this year. He's getting a Supermax. And if Trae Young's an all-NBA player, Danny, that means the team is probably going to be a top 4 seed in the conference next year. So you add all that together, then I think it all works out for both sides. So it maybe works out in Trae Young's favor that he gets 5 years, 350. I think would be the deal. It all could work out for the Hawks and for him.
Yeah, and if you are Atlanta, or I mean, actually, if you're Trae Young, you look at this and say, yes, been to a conference finals, but I think the current roster, I think it's fair to say the current roster in Atlanta is the best one that he's been on in the NBA. And there are expectations, real expectations in Atlanta that are higher than I think they've been at any point in Trae Young's career. And if this team looks the way that they can, if they stay healthy, if they pop off the way that we think they can pop off, then Trae Young probably gets paid next summer. But if it does not go according to plan, then maybe Trae Young is elsewhere. I don't know, but it'll be a fascinating thing to see. Now, but there's one team in the NBA that really has done nothing this summer. They're still waiting in restricted free agency limbo. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors next, right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, today's show brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Maybe Monday Night Football is what you want to get into on FanDuel because this week on Monday night, we've got the Jets. We've got the Dolphins, maybe not the best matchup on paper, but you can get Miami -2.5 at home. Miami as a favorite, given what they've looked like this year. Not sure I love that. Justin Fields supposed to be back in the starting lineup for the New York Jets. Maybe the Jets +2.5 on the road on Monday night is the way to go, but FanDuel has it all. They've got baseball. They've got basketball. Futures for the NBA could be your thing. Who's going to win the MVP? Is Luka finally going to get an MVP as he's been a favorite, one of the favorites for the past several years? Maybe you think so. Maybe you think Oklahoma City is going to win the title again. You can bet them +210 to win the NBA Finals on FanDuel. FanDuel has it all, and you can have it all with FanDuel right now. Again, place your first $5 bet. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel Sportsbook app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first watch today and every day. You can find us on YouTube. And if you are watching, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything from us here at Locked On NBA. And the Golden State Warriors really haven't done anything this summer. And a big reason why they haven't done anything. Now, they have had conversations, I think it's fair to say, and they have expected moves that they can and will make when certain things happen. But Jonathan Kuminga still floating out there in restricted free agency. He is at this point in a contractual stalemate with the Golden State Warriors. He has not gotten an offer that he wants. The Warriors have not succumbed to his request so far. And this means that Golden State hasn't been able to sign Al Horford, who everybody expects to be on the Warriors, is still a free agent, hasn't been able to sign Seth Curry, Steph's younger brother. He is still a free agent because the Warriors right now don't know what their cap sheet's going to look like because of the Jonathan Kuminga situation. And I am fascinated to hear what everybody has to say at Warriors Media Day on Monday.
So reportedly, and I believe that the deadline for the qualifying offer is Wednesday.
Yes. October 1st. So they are taking it right up to it.
What are they doing? Like, for me, this is so... And apparently, Draymond and Steph are meeting with the ownership and with the front office here soon. And because they're just, I think, bewildered, as the rest of the public is, on why exactly, number one, this situation has taken so long, but also, number two, are we all on the same page here? Like, do we all understand what's at stake? Do we understand that we're in a situation now where we're going to have to figure out who our team is? Like, who's going to be our rotational players? Who's our playoff rotation? Who's our starting lineup? We don't know. So you got Steph Curry at the end of his prime. Like, he's not in his prime, but he's still in an all-NBA level prime. Jimmy Butler, an all-NBA level player. Draymond, DPOY level player still. Three older players are all 35 and up. Like, I'm 35. They're a different age of 35 than me. They got miles, thousands of miles.
Man, you just ran a 5K. Give yourself some credit.
Sure, yeah, right. But I'm saying that, like, I'm in good shape. I feel good, but like I don't have to play in the NBA and rumble every day. So you got Steph, who's finna be 38, I think, coming up soon.
I believe so. I
So,
know he's 37. I don't know when his birthday is.
but you understand what I'm saying though? Like that just seems like a very tenuous situation to have your superstar in, the all NBA player you just traded for, and then also have your DPOY player in, and all because of contract stalemates on how much you think Kuminga's actually worth. Okay, well, if you don't believe he's worth that, trade him. Get assets back to build the team out. And also, for me, Danny, it's not just about building the team out. It's about, okay, let's get rid of him, get players in here, but also now we can open the floodgates on who we can pay to bring into the building. Because at this juncture, this is unfair to the players. But this is why ownership is so important. Now, again, granted, they've had some of the best ownership in the sports for the last several years. All of Steph Curry's tenure. The front office has been really good. They've had a lot of obviously really good decision-making from personnel standpoint. Kevin Durant, Sean Livingston, you go up and down. But I think the part is that I'm most concerned with and most upset about is you're in the twilight years of this core. And maybe I don't know. I just think sometimes business gets in the way of the athletes and what they're actually trying to accomplish. And I think it's really unfortunate. But at the end of the day, if this all works out, Kuminga gets qualifying offer, they sign Al Horford, they get another rotational player, they get DeAnthony Melton back for one. And all of a sudden, maybe it looks like the team has 11 players that actually can play and they can go and they're ready to compete. Because, Danny, I think this team is good enough to be a top 6 seed in the Western Conference next year.
Sure.
And I think they could be a team that could push for the conference finals. But I just don't know if they're actually going to have the time to gel and everything else.
I think that is the thing that I get to is, like, Steph is not, as you said, he's not at his peak. He's still an all NBA level player, but he's not what he was in his prime. And that's fine because guys that are going to turn 38 in March are not supposed to be that. Jimmy Butler, I think, is still really good. Probably not at his peak. Draymond Green's still really good. Not at what his peak was. But this is a team that I don't view as one that can win the title this year. Now, could I be wrong? Sure. Been wrong before, will be wrong again. But in order for them to get to a place that I don't think they're capable of getting, I think it's fair to say everything would need to go perfectly for them. And they're already starting off behind the 8 ball because of this situation. Like, they're already starting off in a situation that is not perfect for them at all. So I just think that this is setting up for them to be in a really bad situation that could really, I think, have a big impact on not only how their season starts, but on how this season goes. And Media Day is finally here on Monday. Swipe, I know you and I both very, very excited, and we will have you covered. He'll have you at Locked On Nuggets. Yes, I know. Finally, I'll have you at Locked On Cavs, and right here, Locked On NBA, we will have so much for you, whether it's Locked On NBA Game Night or the Locked On NBA Daily Show. But make sure you keep it locked right here, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, the best way you can help grow this show, click subscribe. Also, hit that thumbs up button for us and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest content from us here at Locked On NBA. And we will talk to you with actual basketball tomorrow.